On behalf of Team Strive, I extend a very warm welcome to each one of you to today's webinar, Indo-Nepal Relations, a Prognosis. The Indo-Nepal relations are best summed up by a friend of mine, General Dushyant, that the two neighbors are separated by borders but united by history. Our relationship transcends time and is defined by oneness of the culture, substantial oneness of the ethnic stock, oneness of the language, religion, and political philosophy. It is rightly said that it's a rishta of roti beti. It's a relationship of complementarity of resources, geographical in terms of water, be it in human resources, wherein 6 lakhs Indians reside in Nepal and 80 lakhs Nepalese in India, be it economic relations, wherein the bilateral trade was to the tune of $8.27 billion in 2018-19, or military relations, wherein the army chiefs of one country is accorded the status of the honorary chief in the other country. There are two treaties which define the relationship between the two countries in the modern times. The first one is Treaty of Sugauli in 1815, which was ratified in 1816 between the British India and the Nepali Empire. The treaty delineated the border between the two countries. The second one is 1950 Indo-Nepal Treaty of Peace and Friendship. The treaty established a close strategic relationship between Nepal and India. The treaty allows free movement of people and goods and a close relations and collaboration on defense and foreign policy. However, situation changed in 1959 when China occupied Tibet and the traditional neighbor of Nepal from the northern side changed from to China. This new geopolitical development had had a profound impact on the Indo-Nepal relations. There have been few more landmark dates in the evolving relationship between the two countries. First is 1989, when Nepal decoupled its rupee from Indian rupee. 2006, when Citizen Bill was passed by Nepal, which accorded citizenship to stateless immigrants in Nepal by virtue of naturalization. It was resented by a section of Nepali population who considered it a threat to their sovereignty. 2015, a very unfortunate blockade triggered by Indian concerns about change in the Nepali constitution, which mercifully has been amended. Coming to present, the conjoined twins appear to be becoming distant neighbors in the recent times. India considers increasing Chinese influence in Nepal a threat to India's national interest, and Nepal is resenting the perceived Indian interference in the body politic of Nepal. Some other incidents are the boundary disputes between the two countries over Kalapani and Susta territorial area, and the demand of Nepal to revisit 1950 Indo-Nepal Treaty. Thus, there is a need to reboot the traditional relationship in today's geopolitical landscape and a view to accommodate the aspirations and concerns of both the countries. Today's webinar is an effort in that direction. We have a very impressive panel to discuss the issue, bedeviling the relationship and the way ahead. The panel consists of Lieutenant General Shokin Chauhan and Lieutenant General Dushyant Singh from Indian side, and Major General Binoj, Basnyet, and Sri Ishwar Khanal sharing the Nepalese perspective. Before I invite the speakers for sharing their views, may I request the speakers to please restrict their talks to about 20 minutes so that we can have an effective interactive Q&A session thereafter. My request to the audience is to please put their questions in the chat box, which will be taken up during the Q&A session. First speaker of the day is Lieutenant General Dushyant Singh, Param Vishishta Seva Medal, Ati Vishishta Seva Medal. The General Officer was commissioned in Maratha Light Infantry during December 1981. His command assignments included command of a battalion, a brigade, a division, and a corps. He also has been a directing staff at the College of Defense Management, Inspector General of National Security Guard, and the Chief of Staff of a command headquarters. And finally, when he reached the pinnacle of his career, he was the commandant of the Army War College, Mao. Post retirement, he is a professor emeritus of Rashtriya Raksha University, a visiting faculty for a number of institutions. He is a prolific writer who contributes regularly on issues related to the national security. He also happens to be vice chairman of our institution. Today, he will be speaking on Indo-Nepalese relations, an Indian perspective. Over to General Dushyant.
Thank you, sir. At the outset, I wish to thank the chairman Strive for having given me this opportunity to speak very, very relevant topic to Nepal relations, the Indian perspective. Being part of the team Strive, I also wish to welcome our guests from Nepal and our distinguished participants who have joined us on the WebEx and Facebook platform of Strive India, this webinar. Someone has very beautifully defined a neighbor's definition. Neighbor is not just one with whom there is sharing of borders, but also one with whom our heart stays connected. Indo-Nepal relations enjoys a very special status in India. It goes beyond diplomacy. I dare say ours is akin to a family relation. Concerns over which our points of view, but we have had a history of this, in my view, seems to be the high point or the basic defining factor in the relation between Nepal. I shall cover my talk in these four major headings: historical bonding, which has been more or less covered by our acting chairman, Chaturvedi. Geostrategic importance, a brief word on that. My major focus will be on the Indian concerns and some broad steps to strengthen the relations, because we will also have General Chauhan speaking on issues for strengthen our relations. Has my slide gone? I think.
Your slide has gone.
Bonding is concerned, I think it dates back to the Vedic period. Ramayana. In fact, characterize our relations. Majority people in both countries share the same religion, language, and food. Many say we are two bodies, one soul. I have gone beyond the phrase which the chairman used. People enjoy free movement across borders. Over 6 lakh Indians live in Nepal and 80 lakh Nepalese in India. People of, people of Nepal enjoy equal work opportunity at par with any Indian citizen. Have the right to job if we, in fact, identify our phrase roti Russia. Economically, too, India, as covered by the chair, is the largest trading partner of Nepal. Bilateral trade in 2018-19 was to the tune of 8.27 billion US dollars, and the Indian export to Nepal was about 7.76 billion. But the foundation of our relations, in my view, is the 1950 Treaty of Indo-Nepal Treaty of Peace and Friendship, which is coming under scrutiny. India appreciates the reservation of this treaty. I shall in a little more detail later, uh, because this apparently is one of the major reasons for the differences between India and Nepal. But the strongest bond, in my view, is that of the Indian Army. And about this, General Chauhan will be speaking in a much greater detail, so I will not dwell much on it. I will not steal the thunder from him. He's the right man for doing this particular job. A brief word about the geostrategic reality of Nepal. This image actually reflects what is the geostrategic reality of Nepal. It is sandwiched between two major countries, India and uh, historically India and ties dating back to the sorry. Geostrategically, Nepal enjoys a unique position by India and in one direction by China. Some people also refer to this as India being locked by. I won't say that India has that much more possibilities of developing and building our relations with Nepal. However, the relations started getting a little astray when Tibet was annexed by China in 1951, and it came to a head with Dalai Lama fleeing to India in 1959. Nepal has about 1,415 kilometers of closed borders with limited connectivity with China. However, of late, China has been trying to develop the connectivity to Nepal rapidly, which includes between Lhasa and Kathmandu. On the other, we have 1,751 kilometers of open free border with everyone free to move visa-less between India and Nepal. As far as China is concerned, it provides a unique position to China in South Asia, which also throws up the possibility of security threat to India. In fact, this I would say is the reason behind most of our reservations which emanate between India and Nepal. Uh, Going straight, since we have a very limited time, to the differences, and I have mentioned in the form of three Ds: desires, dissensions, and three words capture the current issues which are going on between India and Nepal. First is the dispute over the zone of peace proposal of Nepal in the late 80s. It was, in fact, I would say, the beginning of soreness of our relations. Then came the 1950 Treaty of Peace and Friendship, which has been a major point of difference between India and Nepal. For example, it calls for the two countries to inform each other in the event of any serious friction or misunderstanding with any neighboring state, which is likely to cause any breach in the friendly relations between the two governments. Similarly, the treaty talks of defense, including import of arms, ammunition, either from or through the territory. Seeing the reservations which Nepal had, uh, person's group was said that the treaty does require. And I think the mere recognition by both the sides that is a step forward. However, nothing further has developed as far as this particular aspect is concerned. Maybe once the COVID pandemic gets over, we should see some forward movement on this treaty being revised amicably between the two countries. India also feels that Nepal is playing China card against India, secure favor for itself. How far it is true, I think our friends will Nepal will be on this. But this is the perception which at least in the Indian side is there. Similarly, differences have occurred over the
Yeah. Hello, Dushyant. Hello, Dushyant. Dushyant, are you there?
Hello.
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes, my power has gone. I have shifted to mobile, so I'll
Okay.
be taking a little break. Nevertheless, I think can you all see my slides?
Yes, I can see your slides.
Differences have occurred over the economic issues which led actually to a 13 month blockade way back in 1990, which brought the growth of the economy of Nepal to a standstill. I must share that at the time when the economic blockade in the 90s took place, Nepal's economy was growing at a rate of 9.7%, and it was galloping to be one of the richest countries in the world. Because of this 13-month blockade, the Nepalese economy went down to 1.5% growth rate. And actually, it started being counted amongst the poorest. I think we need to reflect somewhere that certain steps Nepal, and I think we need to make amends. And fortunately, for all of us, the government of the day is trying to make amends towards that. Then the issue of rise of the communist parties and their distinct tilt towards China has been one of the concerns, especially in the last few years. Uh, Nepal has been seen as moving closer to China and away from India, and which has been a major cause of concern as far as India is concerned, because its security is deeply tied with Nepal. Then recently, during the last crisis, before that, then also in 2008, the anti-China voices of the Tibetans who were residing in Nepal were brutally crushed by Nepalese security forces, which was again a cause of, as far as India is concerned, and it was a irritant between the Indo-Nepal relations. Actually, in 2014, with the change in government, I think a hope came about when Prime Minister Modi visited Nepal after a gap of almost 17 years. The first Prime Minister to this itself, I think, started the process of revival with the government of India, in fact, opening a US $1 billion line of credit, signing of a hydropower project worth $1 billion, 250 million earmarked for other projects. But I think very shortly this Bonhami got disturbed over the controversy of Buddhism, where Buddha was born, etc. That, in my view, was a very unnecessary controversy. It was created by both. I would blame both the countries for this, but luckily it did not uh, do much damage. But what really affected was the 2015 blockade over the Madheshi, Janjatis, and the Tharu issues. Again, this blockade actually hurt Nepal, leading to a humanitarian crisis, uh, thanks to some steps taken by the Nepalese government, the, for amending the constitution. This particular crisis has blown over, and hopefully we should see a revival of the Indo-Nepal relations. There were issues like India wanted two separate provinces running over almost 800 kilometers with the depth being just about 30 to 50 kilometers. Now, this was something which was uh, totally unacceptable to Nepal. Uh, Hopefully, these issues will be quietly discussed, uh, debated between the two countries, and amicable solution found. Uh, but once again, in the year 2020, the Kala Pani dispute was raised. This actually started off when Raksha Mantri inaugurated the 80 km trade route to Dipu Lake, which is not only a trade route but also a very short distance to to Mount, which is our one of the pilgrimage spots as far as India is concerned, and so for Nepal also. In fact, it's a mutually benefiting proposal. The dispute, of course, has a different connotation altogether. The matters came to a head with the issue of an amended map which showed the area right up to Limpua in Nepalese territory. The area claims that up to Lipu Lake, the entire area is in the Indian territory. Uh, the rules for claiming these are originated in the document of Sugauli, where they have just mentioned Kali River as the boundary, but subsequently, as you all know, that all rivers, mountain rivers, start with number of streams joining together and then forming a river. The international rule for that, and I'm about it, that the international rule for identifying as to which is the mainstream are based on two factors. First is the longest stream, and the second is the volume of water which is flowing in that particular stream. Now, if you go by this definition, definitely Limpiodhura tributary should be considered as the main Kali River distributary. So, if that be the case, then the entire area would fall under Nepal. But there was a map which was again produced in 1870 by the British India, in which Lipu Lake was shown as the boundary, and also the fact that last 200 odd years, the whole area has been either occupied by British India troops or subsequently by Indian troops. We still have a post in Lake, which is the only post left after there were actually 21, 23 posts, from which 22 have been withdrawn, and only one post now lies the border of India and Nepal, and which is in this particular area. Similarly, the revenue documents show this to be part of India, so therefore there is a competing claim, and I think the Joint Commission, which was made for this particular issue to be resolved, also left it vague because it did not actually cover this part of the disputed area while demarcating the boundary. I think it needs a little more attention, a little more deeper consideration, maybe an agreement where the security concerns of India are allayed uh, would be the right way to go, and for both have to come forward after. Just to show you all, this is the map which shows this particular area. You can see actually which has now come in is that in 1960, China and Nepal undertook a agreement in which the boundary between China and Nepal has been shown in the area of Pinker. Now, this would actually further complicate the matters because then it becomes a tri-party dispute between India, China, and Nepal. Therefore, uh, if, if we have to resolve this issue, we know how disputes are resolved with China. Till today, we have not been able to resolve a single point of contention as far as our northern borders are concerned. The issue can get really complicated. For minor mercies, Chinese Foreign Affairs have given a statement saying that the boundary in this area is a bilateral matter between Nepal and India. So therefore, they are not really going to interfere into it. But knowing the history of China, for example, it has disregarded the various international agreements which we have had with China over the boundary issue, as also the boundary with Tajikistan, which they have violated at will after having properly demarcated it. So we are not very sure whether the Chinese position is going to be permanent or temporary in this particular area. We wish that it is a permanent position and that India and Nepal resolve the boundary issue amicably. With this, some other issues which have been a cause of concern have been the Nepal support to the One China policy. Although India has also not openly disagreed with this One China policy, but in actual, I think India is not really supporting of the One China policy.
You're just 5 more minutes. Please conclude.
I'm just about to finish. Then we have the increasing Chinese military to military engagements, uh, social media, social media hashtags like "Go Back India," "Back of India" during Ladakh have also been a cause of concern. The support of Nepal to the initiative is another area. The Chinese study centers, which are coming up along our borders, have been a problematic issue for Indo-Nepal relations. Water, uh, while we have allocated enough resources, we have not been able to complete our project. That is something which is actually leading to this satisfaction between the two. Uh, Floods in the Kosi region, again, it's an area of dispute between the two countries. With that, I will basically suggest four major suggestions. Firstly, is that I think we need to first of all not adopt a big brother attitude. Let Nepal resolve its internal political problems itself. This will, in a way, help them uh, resolve their problem themselves and consider India as an equal partner. Further, India's relations with Nepal are defined at three levels: people to people, business to business, and government to government. I think all three levels have to be exploited to ensure that the between India and Nepal strengthen further. As far as economic aid is concerned, the government is already moving into this direction. We have already allocated the second largest foreign aid component to Nepal after Bhutan. Out of the total 7,000 crores which have been earmarked for foreign aid, the second highest is for Nepal, I think around 1,000 crores. In return, I think India only wants that our security concerns should be addressed by Nepal as far as China and Pakistan is concerned, and both the countries must work towards a peaceful South Asia. And in the words of Prime Minister Modi, Nepal needs HIT, which is highways, infoways, transways. India must ensure that we help them achieve this. As far as the cultural issue, the common heritage, Buddha over Yuddha. With our neighborhood first policy, I think India and Nepal will be able to move forward as they have been doing so in the past, overcoming their hurdles which I have just mentioned. And we look for a brighter future of Indo-Nepal relations. With that, I come to the end of my talk. Uh, just I'm leaving you all with this quotation. You all can read it. It speaks of itself. It has been written by a Nepalese geotechnical coordinator in Vancouver, Naresh Koirala. Uh, he has rightly highlighted what are the shortcomings and what are the uh, statements, which actually lead to dissatisfaction. And also he has suggested some solution, which is that the only option Nepal has is to try and resolve the issue through quiet diplomacy, through dialogue and forming Indian public opinion. This requires leadership with a very high moral standing, sensitivity, and an ability to communicate complex issues peacefully and with calmness. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. I got delayed because of a power cut. I hope I have been able to cover some important issues, and later we will take it.
Thank you, Dushyant. A very, very cogent and comprehensive view of Indian policy. And I think he summed up in the end the best. Buddha versus Yuddha. That should be the approach between India and Nepal. And while onus is on India not to be a big brother, but a partner, also he mentioned that the lingering issues are not so difficult to be addressed. They can be addressed, and I hope and pray that both India and Nepal work in that direction. Now, I welcome our next speaker, Major General Binoj Basnyet, a highly decorated veteran of Nepal Army. He is a recipient of the Order of Suprabal Jan Seva Shri, Order of the Lion of Finland, and the Order of Cross of Germany. He has been an alumni of NDC New Delhi and Command and General Staff College, Fort Leavenworth, USA. He has also attended Advanced Security Cooperation course from the Asia Pacific Center for Security Studies, Hawaii, USA. Executive course in Defense Decision Making from the Center of Civil Military Relations, Naval Postgraduate School, Monterey, USA. Further, he has been a graduate of Royal Military Academy Sandhurst, United Kingdom, and Army War College, Mao. His key assignments included command of a brigade, Deputy Chief of Staff and Commandant of Nepalese Army Military Academy and Nepalese Army Command and Staff College. Presently, he is involved in advising, writing, editing, and participating in intellectual capacity on geopolitical and national security issues. The General will speak on aspirations and expectations of Nepal from India to strengthen Indo-Nepal relations. Over to you, sir. We look forward to your very intently.
Right, thank you. Thank you so much. I hope you can all hear me.
Yes, we can.
Okay, all right. Thank you for the kind introduction, and thank you once again, the Society for Transformative Research Integrations and the Veterans Empowerment, the STRIVE, for giving me the platform to talk on an imperative, the aspirations and expectations of Nepal from India to strengthen Nepal-India relationship. So where the geopolitical environment is shifting and the world focuses on our part of the world, South Asia is more strategic in the second half of the 21st century. So let me flinch with the customary and conduct of politicians. Politicians always claim to work for the people and for the benefits of the poor. And the opposition parties claim to protect and prevent the people from their own government. So, I'm very pleased to be a part of the veterans panel this morning. I can talk openly and attempt to bring about probable measures or a way forward that exists between our two nations that are interconnected, interdependent, not just with the borders, civilization, strong culture, and history. So I do not want to. Sorry, not want to go to the details of thought and diplomatic efforts that has been like surfacing in the last 5 years with the promulgations of the Nepal's Federal Secular Republic 2015 Constitution, which was promulgated by the majority of the legislature, but was opposed. Was not possessed by the Madhesis, the Janjatis, and the Tharus, which was then followed by the undeclared blockade by India, the left parties, the constitutional forces, the United Marxist and Leninist, and the constituted forces, the Nepal Communist Party, Maoist unity in the three-tier elections with an anti-Indian oratory. So the communist government's parliamentary endorsement to induct Kalapani area in the maps of Nepal, making the disputed area into occupied. So these issues have been part of one, the domestic nationalism that most nations are thriving forward with, and of course, two, the geopolitical shifts in South Asia. So when we discuss about the populace, it is different in the mountains, hills, madhes, and the urban areas. Let me highlight the general perception that the Nepalese people talk about. One is India's micromanagement in Nepal. Two, the use of anti-Indian slogans by political parties in relations for domestic nationalism. 3. The use of China's political interests for political suitability. So now I will examine 5 doctrinal imperatives. 1. The changed geography. So the Himalayas and the south of the Himalayas has formidably changed, and it is more accessible due to the variations in environment, infrastructure development, and political interests and political will by the People's Republic of China. The mountains that used to be barriers are flattening. The strategic communications networks are being constructed. Connectivity is not just physical and amongst bordering states, but ideas, values, and cultures are also there. Okay. So the regional old structure is in question with the China's growing interest in South Asia. With the visits of President Xi Jinping to Nepal, Myanmar, and its support to Pakistan in the UN on the revoking of Article 370, it's just few examples. So the economic assistance and the engagements are assisting for political influence and strategic interest. So China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, the CPEC, Nepal as a gateway to India with Belt and Road Initiative with the China Trans-Himalayan Dimensional Connectivity Network, China-Myanmar Economic India-Myanmar Corridor. So the additions of China's firmness and a will to be a bridge to the Indian Ocean, as 80% of China's energy resources grow through the Malacca Straits. Now, Nepal's General Dushyant had brought up, I mean, it covers more than 14 kilometers. It's also a sensitive and perceived as a probability of threat to both China and India. Nepal stood as a buffer, the opening and the likelihood of strategic connectivity with air, train from the Himalayas to the borders of India. The trends of geopolitics will put up with the regional linkages, which will uphold security, diplomatic. All 6 mountain passes from China to Nepal are vibrant and strategically promising. The Kalapani area, which is 416 kilometers to located at the northwest end, and most Olangchungula is 41 kilometers to the Siliguri corridor, known as the chicken neck of India. So both these areas are the only 2 districts that border China and India. So Siliguri is the state of West Bengal, is a vital intersection that connects Bhutan, Nepal, and Bangladesh. The Darjeeling Hills, Northeast India, and Sikkim are equally imperative. So the 2 landlocked tiny Himalayan South Asian nations, Bhutan and Nepal, along the Himalayas, and the northeastern part of India, also known as Seven Sisters, are the most important strategic constituents in South Asia. So the China has stretched out bilateral and multilateral associations with South Asian states, particularly Bangladesh, Myanmar, Nepal, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, and Thailand. In respect of economy, political cooperation indicates the strategic shifts of China. Point is the geopolitical situation is diverse. So why is the Himalayan region even more significant now? So the geopolitical narratives can be assumed in the power competition, cooperation, and now confrontations between China and India in South Asia and the Himalayan region. China and India's rise and influence is leading to geopolitical and geoeconomic stimulus in South Asian region. So the militarizations of the Himalayas can be an example of 2 powers intersect interests being more political with risks of threat defending the Himalayan region. For China, the province of Xinjiang, Tibet, alongside the Himalayas, is in the same way imperative for stability. So China's peaceful rise, and sometimes referred to as peaceful development, is an official principles of countering China's threat theory. So Nepal sought for an alternative strategic network after the unofficial blockade by India, when China's and gain a foothold, while India's lack of trust in Nepal's policies and political leaders and their footprints, as well as, of course, of actions in Nepal, surely has a geopolitical and geoeconomic significance. So the Oli government looked into the northern neighbors, signed various MOUs, and and allowed transport, allowing access to seaports of third country with 6 custom points and 3 trade routes, which sounds good, but is yet to see and very challenging. China has been the largest source of FDIs in Nepal now. The agreements focus mainly on 7 categories, mainly strategic communication connectivity with railways and waterways, energy with hydro projects, power trade, infrastructure development, agriculture, political and diplomatic gestures, and security concerns. So when the world and the accountable leaders are equally responsive to addressing COVID-19, so is the momentum of Cold War 2.0 revamping. China espouses policies to internally harmonize its society and externally promote a peaceful international environment in South Asia. China seeks to avoid unnecessary international confrontations, distinguishing as a responsible leader, and put emphasis on soft power. I think a few occurrences that were visible are the Doklam dilemma that lasted 73 days in 2007, 5 of August revoking of Article 370 and 35A of the constitutions of India, forming 2 union territories, Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh. And as of 5th of May, China and India's actions in border in Penyong Lake, Ladakh, face-offs are ongoing. So the militarizations and development of infrastructure by both China and India is the impetus. The recent surfacing of border disputes between Nepal and India is in the strategically military vital Kalapani area is another case in point of the importance of the Himalayan region. And my third point is a great power rivalry is shifting in our part of the world. So the United States and China's rivalry are emerging in our regions, with the United States national security strategy has clearly established China, Russia as competitors. The United States is using economic tools, alliance and partnership. India and China's confrontation is evidently visible. The geopolitical and geoeconomics environment in the Himalayan region post-COVID-19 must be well analyzed and evaluated to give course to effective diplomatic management, considering the Indo-Sino and Indo-US relations are constantly changing. So at the country's level, if we refer Nepal's foreign policy in 1950s, it is evidently the regional evolutions such as India's independence and Chinese annexation of Tibet, formation of a world's political, the United Nations and financial institute, the World Bank, has played a major factor in determining Nepal's and the Himalayan course of politics. And such affairs will influence the border boundaries adjoining China along the Himalayas, will therefore continue to be a matter of concern to both China and India and the 5 states that border both the powers, including Nepal. So the focus of the United States defense forces in the regions, the building up of Chinese defense assets along its Tibetan plateau, and India's neighborhood first and act east policy are all indications of a larger power game comprising the competition between the 2 largest economies of the world. Therefore, the upcoming geopolitical evolutions of the Himalayan region is an important area of concern. So let me go to the other point is the argument if China will come as a contributor while Indo-US strategic cooperation comes up with allies and partners to isolate China. So the recent examples was in Nepal, where there were gossips of IPS, the Indo-Pacific Strategy, the Belt and Road Initiative, and the Millennium MCC. So the new Biden administration has said his administration was prepared for extreme competitions with China, but that his approach would be different than his predecessor. So I quote, I am not going to do it the way Trump did. We are going to focus on the international rules of the road. So Biden told this, so that's unquote in the interview with the CBS in. So the tensions between Beijing and Washington, the world's two largest economies, soared under the Trump administrations and looks like will continue in the years to come, but in a different modus operandi. So my fourth point now is the geopolitical compulsions is visible. So the values-based dimensions is also in roads. So democracy versus totalitarian communism is underway. So the fundamental, how would a non-aligned movement shape and how would the first neighborhood policy unfold? So economy will continue and remain as a tool of national power. Military threat is more visible than before. So India's vital strategic role is visible time and again, stressing on Act East policy, Look West policy, and Look Far East policy. So the first neighborhood policy is unfinished. India is more inclined to strategic rebalancing approach. And my last point is the weak system of governance in Nepal, mainly due to corruption and lack of strategic thinking, is observed. So let me highlight the geopolitical trends. So India and China paid and rapid economic growth and political influence in South Asia. A strategic communication network north to south as part of the BRI project will put up strategic regional linkages, which will uphold security, diplomatic, and economic and political consequences. A variety of transport systems from air, land, rail, and waterways. And lastly, new approach for economic development through mega projects and increase the energy plant and power and the FDI. So with these surroundings, let me recommend the three way forward, though there are many that could be highlighted. So the way forward is one, geostrategic connectivity. So Nepal and India must use the bilateral resources for multilateral or regional benefits. For example, efficient and effective use of water resources for energy, and air, land, and water-based infrastructure connectivity. Second is multi-dimensional engagement, youth-focused engagement, cultural and religious engagement that binds people to people, government engagement with emphasis on bureaucratic engagement, consistent national policy-based engagement, and the last is advanced security engagements to confront common challenges. And my third way forward is perception that influences internal and external factors of international relations. So this is like directly influences trust between the people that can be utilized or misutilized for political convenience. One is information's, or many times, unfortunately, disinformation's-led perception. Second is promise versus action-led perception. Third is bilateral understanding of perception on global affairs. So let me conclude that one of the most fundamentals of Nepal-India relations is Nepal-India security relationship. National security and regional security come as a priority in these changing times and circumstances. The global concerns is changing. Indo-Pacific is the priority and South Asia is shifting. So domestic nationalism in both Nepal and India has been a trend in politics. So risk of regional polarization the stability of foreign policy amid political chaos, creating an environment for working together post-COVID-19 is a challenge and vulnerability for both Modi and Oli. So a strategy to cope with the pandemic would need to harness resources, though vaccine diplomacy is on hand. Nepal is going through multiple crises, from pandemic disease, political instability, misgovernance, and economic contractions to systematic inequality and environmental degradations. So the Quad looks vital for prosperity and stability in the Indo-Pacific regions and the world. Would there be a military alliance to pressure and bring in China? The United States during the Cold War opposed whatever the Soviets sought to make inroads and interventions active. Now in Cold War 2.0, interventions in China looks likely. So the incidents in the Himalayan region happens with an intent. Indications hint on possibilities. Nepal and India will have to look happenings in the Himalayas with possibilities of long-term strategic impact. So hope Nepal's political masters and head of strategic organizations understand the geostrategic picture, interests and policies of both the immediate neighbors and politics and even constraints that could corner Nepal's means and ways to evolve her own interest. So Nepal cannot afford to play one nation to the other. It will be both a strategic and diplomatic setback. People cannot be held prisoners for strategic mistakes of lack of strategic thoughts and decisions by politicians. So the root of Nepal-India's geopolitical predicament lies in the lack of strategic management. Strategically, it is poverty. 2, rise in unemployment. In governance, it is bad management in all fields, including border. 2, accountability. 3, corruption. And 4, structural deficiency. So let me end with the 3 points. Politically, let us assure the people of Nepal and India on the portent of our togetherness. 2, assuring India and Nepal can defend its territory. Diplomatically, to entrust trust with India on the denial of activities that offends the values and principles of their existence. 2, Nepal territory cannot be used by any foreign defense forces. 3, Nepal adheres to the principles of non-alignment and coexistence. Militarily, assure both the neighbors of Nepalese army's capabilities and the ability with defensive potentials to defend our own territory, integrity, and sovereignty. Thank you.
Very high scholastic presentation by General Basnyet. Thank you, sir, for a very detailed presentation. Some of the major issues which I could, I can highlight. One is what he talks of cooperation in the resources, and presently only 45 megawatts worth of cooperation is there between India and Nepal, and which has got a potential of almost 45,000 megawatts of water-based resources. Same is energy, though there some lines have been made, power connection, but much more needs to be done. And in the end, what he mentioned about creating mutual trust, I think that's the most important part. I think the decision makers need to take note of, in both the countries, of what General Basnyet has mentioned. And thank you for your very candid presentation. Our next speaker is Lieutenant General Shokin Chauhan, Param Vishish Seva Medal, Ati Vishish Seva Medal, Yuddha Seva Medal, Sena Medal, and VSM. The General is an alumnus of St. Columbus High School, New Delhi, the NDA, the Defense Services Staff College, the Army War College, and the National Defense College, New Delhi. He was commissioned in the 11 Gurkha Rifles in December 79. In his illustrious career, he commanded a battalion, a mountain brigade, a mountain division, and a strike corps. He has also been the military attaché at the Indian Embassy in Nepal, Additional Director General Public Information at the Army Headquarters, and the Director General of the Assam Rifles. Post-retirement, he headed the ceasefire monitoring group for the implementation of the agreed ceasefire rules between the center and the insurgent outfits in the northeast. He's a prolific writer and very active in the lecture circuits. The good general will speak on leveraging traditional ties with Nepal. I will not keep you waiting for his very presentation, and we look forward to it. Over to General Chauhan.
Thank you, General Chaturvedi. Thank you, Strive India, for calling me. It's wonderful to see old friends, many of whom I haven't met for a long time. I see Major AK there, an old colleague and a mentor in many ways. I see my good friend Binoj Basnyet there, and of course Dushyant and all of you. Great to see you all. Great to be a part of this wonderful group of veterans. And congratulations on having started Strive India, and thank you for calling me. Now, the topic given to me is leveraging traditional ties with Nepal to strengthen our relationship with the Indo-Nepal relationship. For a military man to be given cultural subjects is a little difficult, but since I've stayed some time, and as you mentioned, sir, I was the DA in Nepal during a very difficult time. I was there during 2004 to 2007. That coincided with the time of the second Jan Andolan. When I went to Nepal in June 2004, Nepal was a monarchy. It was a stable monarchy, and there was no problem. Everything was going well. And I remember going to meet the king. The DA doesn't present credentials, but at the same time, the DA does go and meet the king. And I remember meeting the king and also taking my ambassador to meet the king when he came in after Ambassador Shamsaran left. But when I left Nepal in 2007, December or November, it had changed entirely. It had changed from a monarchy to a raucous democracy. A situation where nothing was clear really. Prachanda had just come in. Girija Prasad Koirala was the prime minister. But we always knew that there were a lot of changes. They hadn't yet agreed to the constitution, but the constitution was being written. There were changes every day, and every day there were lots of situations which required there was a lot of need to continue a relationship, and that's the time I realized how important Nepal will always be to India. Now, when you speak of culture, sir, there are a couple of issues that I'd like to tell you about. There is a shared history. Dushyant has spoken of the shared history. We must know that should be able to share Lord Buddha. We have a shared Hindu culture, our gods and our dhams. I wonder how many of you actually know that there are 4 dhams in India, in Nepal also. The temple of Lord Pashupatinath, the temple of Lord Muktinath, the Baraha Kshetra, and the Ruru Kshetra. Let me tell you a little about the Ruru Kshetra and the Baraha Kshetra and where all they are. The Baraha Kshetra is actually an important Hindu pilgrimage in the eastern Nepal, on the banks of the mighty Saptakoshi River, which is away from the buzzing town of Biratnagar. And actually, Binoj Basnyet talked of Siliguri. From Siliguri, Biratnagar is barely an hour and a half on a good road. It's the commercial hub of eastern Nepal. Baraha Kshetra gets its name from the Baraha avatar, the 3rd incarnation of Lord Vishnu, according to the Puranas. In fact, the king of Nepal used to be, or often took himself to be, one of the incarnations of Lord Vishnu. So Lord Vishnu took the Baraha avatar to kill the demon Hiranyaksha. the main attraction Kshetra is the white Shikara style temple dedicated to Lord Vishnu, one of the Trimurti or the Holy Trinity. It is also believed that Lord Vishnu killed Hiranyaksha at this very place. Similarly, we have the Pashupatinath. It's again one of the holiest pilgrimages in Nepal. And the issue why I'm covering is that there are so many commonalities as you go to Nepal. If you travel in Kathmandu or you travel along all the villages of Nepal, you really don't feel that you've left India. The next issue that we must really talk about, and Basnyet covered this as well as Dushyant covered this, is the sharing of the river waters between India and Nepal. General Chaturvedi, you spoke about the power potential of Nepal. It's remained a potential. And for long, even I remember those 3.5 years in the embassy, we tried our best to try and get some kind of agreement to try and start producing power together, as we were doing, and we have successfully done in Bhutan. But the issue is that more than anything else, what really stops us is the suspicion and the lack of trust between each other. Two of Nepal's three major river systems, the Koshi and the Saptagandaki, also known as Narayani in Nepal and the Gandak in India, flow down the Indian plain and finally drain into the Ganga. The Ganga Bhagirathi Hooghly river system was declared a national waterway by India in 1986. I don't know if you're aware about the problems that the flow of flood waters cause on the Indo-Gangetic plains. For long, the government of Bihar and the government of Eastern UP have tried to construct abutments and have tried to construct a lot of issues to make sure that there is some kind of flood control on these between the waters of India and Nepal. But every year we have floods in this area. If only we had got together and made some kind of system by which we could have prevented a lot of problems between each other by just creating and having trust on each other. Dushyant also spoke about the kind of another commonality, which is the Indian Army and the Gurkhas of the Indian Army. Part of the defense attache's job in Nepal is to pay pension. And when I was there in Nepal, the pensioners were 124,800. So 124,800 pensioners used to be paid by hand every month in 16 different district soldier boards. We had taken up a case with the government of Nepal at that time, I'm talking of 2005, to increase the number of district soldier boards. And by the time I was leaving in 2007, the government of Nepal gave us 5 more district soldier boards. So we have 21 district soldier boards that are located between the east to west of Nepal. Almost every district of Nepal, every important district of Nepal, every district where our soldiers stay has a district soldier board. That means the Indian Army and the government of India have a presence in each part of Nepal. And the presence is not just nominal. There's a phenomenal goodwill that is there between the people who have served in the Indian Army, their families, and the Indian Army. When you go to a soldier's house in Nepal, and I'm certain that some of the Gurkha soldiers here and Gurkha officers here would be aware that the most important place is kept for a memento of the battalion. Everything that they have learned in the unit is replicated in their homes. They wear with pride the blazer, they wear with pride the tie, they wear with pride the insignia of the regiment. Not only their children do it. I don't know if you're all aware that I am also doing my PhD. In fact, I've submitted my PhD thesis on Nepal. And one of the issues that came up in my thesis was, what do our pensioners feel between the issues between India and Nepal. I'm talking on soldiering. I spoke to 100 odd soldiers about it. And what they told me was amazing. They said, sir, we can never forget what India is to us, but we are Nepalis. So the issue is that when you have 128,000 pensioners, and if you multiply that by a family of 5, you come to approximately 10 lakh people in Nepal who are paid directly by us. Why would the countries of India and Nepal have a problem? I haven't understood. Binoj Basnyet spoke about the politician. I agree with you entirely, Binoj. Binoj, I was Binoj's sponsor also during the NDC, and we agree on almost everything about this. And I'm absolutely clear that every issue has been a wrong reaction either on Nepal or by us. I have traveled the absolute extent of Nepal, from the east to the west, from the north to the east. Let me just give you an idea of the demographics of Nepal and why it's important that we shouldn't react to small pinpricks, as Binoj Basnet said, the pinpricks that are provided by the politicians of the day, who either say they're defending the honor and integrity of the country, or the opponents or the opposite who say they're defending the country from the government. Now, Nepal is actually, you should look at Nepal in 3 different segments. One is the Tarai region, the region that flows into India. This is the most populous part of Nepal. 49 to 50% of the population of Nepal lives in the Tarai. Almost 90% of these people have shared families in India. Almost 90%, maybe 95% of these people. When Dushyant spoke about the fact that in 2007, when they were talking about giving citizenship, it was this particular issue. A lot of people of Tarai had not been given citizenship by the government of Nepal. This was given in 2007. So almost 50% of the population of Nepal lives in the Tarai. The next part of Nepal are the middle hills of Nepal. The middle hills where the soldiers who serve in the Indian Army live. The Guguruns, the Magars, the Rais, the Limbus. This is the place where if you go outside the Kathmandu Valley and you travel east to west, 90% of the families in each of those villages have someone who has served in the Indian Army or someone who wants to serve in the Indian Army. You go to any village, the first issue is the DA has come, will you take this boy to the Indian Army? You will have your soldiers coming, you will have this. I'm talking about the affiliation that we have between each other, which everyone seems to miss out. And then the third part of Nepal are the upper Himalayas. The population of the upper Himalayas, the Sherpas, where the Sherpas and Tamangs live, are very few. And actually the upper Himalayas don't take much part in the political proceedings of Nepal. But the noise that is made by the people who live in Kathmandu or the self-serving politicians is the noise that we hear. Why is it that somehow we don't hear the noise of the rest of the people of Nepal? Why are we not hearing the voice of the rest of the people of Nepal? During the Jan Andolan 2, I entered Nepal from the Lipu Lake Pass. I went across the bridge from Mahendranagar and I traveled down. I traveled to the towns of Palpa, to Surkhet, to Nepalganj. I went along that way to Butwal and further along the Mahendra Rajmarg right till Siliguri. This is during the Jan Andolan. And there wasn't one person who said that India was wrong or India is bad. There's a difference between politicians. There's not a difference between the people of India and the people of Nepal. The people of India and the people of Nepal are one people. We are merely two nations. And when we start understanding, because I'm talking to a group of people who are soldiers, who understand soldiering, who understand the issue of not being politicized, of not being, of our thoughts not being broken by politicians. I am convinced, sir, I'm convinced that we as people are one people. I'm convinced that we can live happily. And the next issue that you talk about is this issue about China. And there's so much noise about China. But I don't think we've read history. China has always had a place in Nepal, other than the time when Britain became the supreme power between 1834 to 1950. And probably I would take it till the time when China entered Tibet, 1951, 52, 53. Just this point, just this one century. For the rest of the century, and I'm certain Binoj Basnyet will bear me out, is that China has always had a place in the history of Nepal. It is not today. It is not that we are losing space in Nepal because of our own stupidities. China is a neighbor of Nepal. She has a place there. It is for us to understand and to leverage the closeness of our people and not get afraid because China can build one better road than us. And if China can build roads, why on earth can't we build the roads? Every road that has been built, everything that has been built by us simply does not stand the test of time because the wrong people built it there. So I rest my case, sir. All I can say is that culturally, we are one people. The people of Nepal, when you talk to them, and you must talk to the rest of Nepal, not just the Kathmandu Valley. Talk to the people of Mahendranagar, talk to the people of Biratnagar, talk to the people of East Nepal, of Central Nepal, talk to everybody. Why are we just listening to the noise from Kathmandu? Thirdly, we have 128,000 pensioners putting in 1,100 to 1,200 crores of Indian rupees every month as pension. They have up to 10 family members who depend on that pension. There are more than 65 lawmakers, that is people belong to the Legislative Assembly, who are children of our soldiers. And those children too, because I have personally met them, share a very, very warm thought process and very warm feelings towards India, because many of them have been educated in India. The unfortunate thing is, sir, even as service people, we do not understand history, we don't talk of geography, we don't talk of anything. And I would really request you all that please look at these issues. We are actually one people. So thank you, sir, for giving me this time. I am extremely passionate about the issue of Nepal. I have lived there. I have traveled in Nepal. I belong to the Gorkha Rifles. I have very, very close friends in Nepal, and many of them are brothers in many ways. They have fought for me, they have died for me, and I too feel the same. For many years, when I was a young officer, I had adopted a young boy of my soldier's nephew, made him study in Nepal. So I am very close to that part, and I have visited many villages of Nepal. All I can request is that don't listen to just the noise of one place. Listen to the rest of Nepal. There's a different sound and a different meaning there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, General Shokin Chauhan. I think it was a very, very passionate and revealing presentation by General Chauhan. He talked of shared history. He talked of shared Buddhist traditions and Hindu traditions. He talked of existing suspicion, which is more on account of politicians, which kind of corroborates what General Basnyet had mentioned. He talked of the the ethnic divide in the Nepal and what needs to be done. I'm most impressed with his last part where he talks of that we must talk to the people. there is no question of not being together when we have so much of groundswell and goodwill for us. And I think all we can do is that myopic politicians be kept away from Indo-Nepal relations. The relations will thrive. Thank you. It was a very, very nice presentation. Now we come to the last speaker of the day, Shri Ishwar Dev Khanal. He is the senior journalist of Nepal. In his professional career of over 20 years, he has constantly endeavored to situate himself at the helm of professionalism. After working for print media for more than 10 years and 7 years in TV news channel, he ventured into online journalism. He is presently the editor of the Khabar Hub of Nepal. He is a highly traveled journalist who has been the assistant press and public outreach officer with the course of the European Union Election Observation Mission. He has also participated in the US State Department sponsored International Visitors Leadership Program in USA. Shri Khanal will speak on impact of China on Indo-Nepal relations. Over to Shri Khanal.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for this opportunity. To begin with, let me cite a very recent example of the Chinese side, is trying to establish its footprint in Nepal. For example, the Chinese side wrote a letter to Nepal's Ministry of Foreign Affairs, mounting pressure to accept the vaccines, first under the condition that the details about the vaccines will be sent afterwards, a topsy-turvy way of vaccine procurement. So why I'm raising this issue is, let me add another point. I believe the reason, that since India recently provided 1 million doses of COVID-19 vaccine to Nepal, China too wanted to follow suit. To prove that, yes, we are with you during Nepal's difficult times. This is one of the Chinese strategies. In fact, China had been mounting pressure on Nepal and the government through various channels before also. However, now it has come, overtly. It no longer remains a secret as my online cover hub, we exposed his plans repeatedly, several times, with concrete evidence. So we have been reporting, Chinese activities, Chinese illegal activities in Nepal, and, covert activities, everything we have been reporting, what China is doing at the moment in Nepal here. Here, let me again cite an example, like Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi on Friday, that means last Friday, held a telephone conversation with Pradeep Kumar Gyawali, Nepal's foreign minister, and piled pressure on him. Piled pressure, this is what we have quoted, to accept the vaccines, COVID vaccines, first under the condition that the details about the vaccines will be sent afterward, but you are required to accept those vaccines to you. Conversation between China's foreign minister and Nepal's foreign minister was concerned about the efficiency and effectiveness of the Chinese vaccines against COVID-19 sure to be provided to the government of Nepal by China. In fact, China said all necessary documents would be provided later, but Nepal must take the vaccine immediately. So this was in fact, putting pressure on the Nepalese government to accept the vaccines. Why? Because very recently, India has already sent 1 million doses of COVID-19 vaccines. So, and basically the letter had a tone of a warning. Otherwise, Nepal may need to wait quite long to get the vaccine. I quote this sentence. This is in the letter sent by Chinese side to the Nepalese government, especially to the foreign affairs of Nepal. So it has also warned that the vaccines would be redistributed by other commercial orders, and the manufacturing of the vaccines for Nepal will have to be put on a much later list. So This is one, like instance how China mounts pressure on the government of Nepal, the political parties of Nepal. Warning comes at a time when India has already promised again 2 million COVID vaccines, another 2 million COVID vaccines by the UK. So as we all know, the Nepal's Department of Drug Administration has only allowed conditional emergency use of Covishield produced by the Serum Institute of India. So this is one instance of how China has been trying to establish its footprint. So this is one stance. Now let me cite another example of how China's sharp power in Nepal has come with massive propaganda and national interest with implications for India's influence in the region, especially in our country, Nepal. Interestingly, it has started for the last 3 or 4 years, I would say, providing Mandarin classes to thousands of youngsters and students in the schools of Nepal. Even high schools, they have been providing Mandarin Chinese language classes in the schools to young students. So this, in fact, they are trying to include Mandarin language in the curriculum as well, but that has not been done yet. So this move has been seen as a soft yet powerful move by the China, as Beijing is always aware of the fact that language has been a barrier in Nepal, where Nepali and Hindi are of the same root. Like most of the Nepali population speak Hindi, they understand Hindi. So this is one of the reasons why China has been, trying to impose its influence here in the country. So I happen to, let me give you an example. Like I happened to visit a high school in Baneshwar, Kathmandu last year. And to my surprise, like a Chinese lady teacher was taking a Mandarin class, teaching Mandarin Chinese language to the students of grade 8. I was shocked. So when I asked her about the motive, so what she told me, if these students can understand Hindi, they can speak Hindi, why can't they learn Chinese language? So I was shocked. I responded to her saying Nepali and Hindi were quite similar, both Devanagari script. She, however, insisted that learning Mandarin was also quite easy, and even asked me to learning Mandarin will help me in the long run. I don't really understood what that long run meant. I didn't say anything, but in the evening I thought, what does it mean to say in the long run? That's it. Another episode I would like to refer here is, China, meanwhile, has been currently trying to at the moment. For instance, the year 2020 witnessed several, series of meetings by Chinese ambassador to Nepal Yankee with the Nepal Communist Party leaders, endeavoring, she was trying to avert the party split, and narrow down the differences between the top political leaders of the Nepal Communist Party. To quote, I would like to quote some, highly placed political personalities. What he said is China has not matter micromanagement in Nepal. Why can't China? So this is what they want here in Nepal. So yes, last year Nepal and India, as we all know, were engaged in a bitter row over the disputed areas of Lipu Lake, Kalapani and Limpiadura. And there were anti-India slogans everywhere in the streets of Kathmandu, even in other cities of Nepal, towns of Nepal, and other regions with like the back of India sort of thing, and Nepal even published a new map showing these areas as its part, as we all know this also. So this also pushed the relations between, the two countries. However, it has been, coming to, back to the track at the moment, I would say. So soon This also, a border road triggered between Nepal and China after Beijing Chinese side constructed 11 buildings in Humla, in the district of Humla in far western Nepal, which in Nepal claimed as its territory. So interestingly, the fact that China wants to create a strategic space in this Himalayan nation at the cost of India and other powers is evident from the way it showed its displeasure at Nepal's preparedness to accept the grant. I'm going beyond that. I think I'm going quite behind the issue. From grant from the MCC projects. Like Beijing, in fact, also appears to want to stretch the notion of a stable government in Nepal to mean a government that draws Nepal closer to China at the expense of Nepal's traditional relations with India. In fact, what I would like to say is one of our previous speakers, he talked about Nepalese Gorkha army and a significant number of pensioners in Nepal who have been receiving pensions from India. But what I want to say is not only that, Nepal's relations with India has been smooth despite all odds or say highs and lows. For example, I also belong to Nepal and several of my relatives are in India, and we share the same culture, we share the same language, religion, and whatnot. The must talk about open border, yes, has to be managed. I think not closed. It has to be managed. So, however, in recent times, China has been successful to some extent in souring Nepal-India relations, like mainly by adopting an approach to woo the Nepalese people, especially the cadres of the ruling Nepal Communist Party, with an anti-Indian sentiment. So even let me give an example. There was a massive mass assembly on Wednesday in the capital yesterday, organized by the ruling Nepal, not the ruling Nepal Communist Party, but the Prasanda Madhav Nepal-led Communist Party of Nepal. So the mass was really huge, and there was a Indian flag somewhere in between, in the mass rally. And when we were fact checking this, whether the Indian flag was real or photoshopped, later we found after fact check that the Indian flag was photoshopped. That was not real. So we even carried a news on that. So this is how, people or some elements have been playing against India in Nepal at the moment. So in order to, bring, disputes between the two friendly neighbors. So this is, to raise, anti-Indian sentiment in Nepal. In light of this stance, what has to be understood is Nepal's policy, motivation at China seems to be playing covertly in souring Nepal's relation with India by raising the terms, raising the issues of treaties or regulating border encroachments, or India is building high structures or build up structures along the border, and they have been raising the issue of inundation, among others, which sometimes force Nepalese people to look for other options, because China is well aware of the fact that Nepal has to tilt towards it if it is angered by the southern neighbor, India. Therefore, it is one of the reasons why Nepal's hardcore communists have been consistently alleging India of all the fuss and instability in Nepal. Even now, political leaders blame one another of dancing to the tunes of India, quote, without any valid evidence. So here, what I want to say is that China is trying to win the hearts and minds of the Nepalese people through some, strategic charity sort of thing. Therefore, I believe, that India has to be, or India needs to be proactive with innovative strategies and policies with Nepal by departing from its, what do you call it, like a traditional security angle. So firstly, identifying the cause of Nepal's behavior towards India, why Nepal's communist government and the party resisting India while being welcoming to China. This, I think, has to be founded. seriously. Another point I would like to raise is like India should also introduce a new economic, like developmental and infrastructure initiatives with Nepal that will address the vulnerabilities in Nepal, especially, mainly Nepal's in the Nepal government's efforts of, slogan of Happy Nepali, Prosperous Nepal, KPOD's, private KPOD government's slogan. However, despite all this, ways it can. However, Nepal being a member of China's BRI project, India needs to deal with an assertive Chinese foreign policy. Since we all know that Nepal shares, like 1,400 Nepal. Hence, what I personally believe is, like India should ignore Nepal's anxieties as a smaller country in the bilateral relationship. Coming back to the same old BRI formulas that the 2015, like there was a blockade sort of thing imposed unofficial blockade imposed by India, like brought some changes in the geopolitics, thus, increasing China's interest as part of the BRI, among others, to especially to, like provide an economic alternative to reliance on India. So, and another aspect of one very important, or I would say significant, aspect in recent times between Nepal and Nepal and China is, is the visit of China's President Xi Jinping in October 2019, the first time in 23 years that a Chinese head of state making the visit. So what I think is, India and Nepal, they share, a porous border, and they share the same culture, the same religion, and the same, the similar language, everything. We have relatives here and there. So we also talked about the Gorkha regiment, the pensioners. And so we believe that Nepal-India relations should go ahead smoothly in the future as well. So with this, I would like to end my presentation, and thank you for giving me this opportunity. So actually, in fact, I had written a small message that today I'm in a rush because I have to, go to attend an interview. So, thank you again for this opportunity. Thank you so much, sir.
Whereas China, duplicity comes out very clearly. One is vaccine diplomacy, where they are trying to, this is the coercive diplomacy which they are applying against China. He also gave the example that of Mandarin introduction in the schools, which is trying to change the culture of Nepal. Probably they may fail in their effort, but nevertheless they are attempting. Chinese ambassador and Chinese foreign minister interfering at the political level is another example. Territorial dispute, this is the political dispensation is leaning towards China, and for their own good and for their own wanting their own for their own reasons. Open border, beautiful point which he has mentioned. He says open border needs to be managed, and some kind of a check and balances need to be introduced. Chinese effort to raise anti-Indian propaganda and sentiments need to be countered by India by using the groundswell which is existing there. Finally, the point which he has mentioned, that India needs to allay Nepal's anxiety on many issues, Case in point is that what has happened in 89-90 or 2015 should never happen, and India has to come out and come out clean on this kind of things. Thank you all the four speakers. Now we will start our Q&A. The first question is General Dushyant. It is while base parameters of historical bonds and geographical realities must remain the basis of relations, we have to realize that circumstances have changed from 1950. Both our democracies have matured. Under these circumstances, why should Nepal not be free to take its own decisions vis-a-vis its neighbors and stroke the world? India is certainly militarily and economically strong, and I'm surprised we feel insecure with Nepal negotiating with China. Second part of this question is core military to military relations, as rightly pointed out, finding fact because politics change, mostly the vested reasons. I feel that this is a part of this question. Would you like to take on this question, Dushyant?
Okay, sir. Well, sir, at no stage, I think India is insecure. That's a wrong premise. What we are definitely concerned about is the Malacca dilemma being addressed by China through Nepal and through Bhutan. As covered by General Binoj also, the two connectivities on the extreme end of Nepal, one which up at Basnyet, the second one via Kathmandu to Lhasa and then on to Pokhara, and the third one closer to the Chicken Neck area are something of a real concern. They are real concern as far as Indian security is concerned. So therefore, we need an assurance that these connectivities ultimately will not lead to security problems. I have my reservations as far as China is concerned. I have done a study of China's behavior, whether it has been with reference to Tajikistan border. They actually went into a proper agreement with Tajikistan, marking the borders correctly on ground, and yet they have violated it at will. Similar is the case with India. With India, we have had five border agreements at all levels, including military to military confidence building measures, including methods to resolve issues. Yet they have consistently broken those agreements, whether it was Muslim, whether it was Dalman, whether it was Sambrangcho. I think we can name innumerable examples of Chinese behavior. So it is not the Nepalese insecurity, but it is the advantage which the Chinese can take of Nepal, relatively weaker nation as compared to China. So that is the concern. As far as relations between India and Nepal are concerned, I think we need to be more generous. We need to pause our rhetoric, and we should be able to improve our relations. Military to military diplomacy, the answer has been well given as far as General Shokin Chauhan's presentation is concerned. Obviously, this is one constant which will always help India and Nepal build their relations forward any situation. I think that should really be.
As far as you're concerned, the onus is on India. The anxiety, as Mr. Khanal also mentioned, of Nepal, and China will continue trying her attempts to influence Nepal, but we need to be more nimble-footed on that. There's another question, which is to Dushyant, to you. China has been slowly increasing its presence in. No, sorry. Uh,
This can be answered. I've got the question. Khanal or
the
Jan
recent
Binoj can answer.
monarchy protests seem to be orchestrated to help this government. I talked to Nepalese living in Missouri, and they claim post-collapse of monarchy, the development of hinterland started. What are your views on that? This probably would be Mr. Khanal would be the best person to reply to this question.
Absolutely.
Still
Sir.
here?
Mr. Khanal or Jan?
Yeah, just left. May I request General Basnyet to answer this question?
Yeah. Okay. Let's think. After the change or the alterations in the, there's some noise coming. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you loud and
Yeah,
clear.
okay, that's fine. Yeah. So after the major alterations in Nepal, so one thing we see the effect, the irresponsible behavior of the political parties that are in power has been a footstep for the majority, for the people to come down to the streets and protest. So one thing for sure is an argument of the changes that has happened in Nepal, that has happened in Nepal as a republic, as a secular, and as a federal state. Whether it was the order of participation of the people or it was the mandated political manifesto of the political party. So the argument remains there. But the concerns of the people in the streets for pro-monarchy is the frustrations by the political parties. Okay? So there has not been a real happiness for the changes that has happened. Uh, uh, but regarding the pro-monarchy demonstration, it is the lack of leadership. So there are factions, the splinter group that are not happy with the changes, but the lack of leadership, the lack of cohesiveness and cooperation for the movement um, uh, is the let's say the factor which will not proceed the frustrations of the government.
Uh, Another question to General Basnyet. China has been slowly increasing its presence in Nepal for many years. This begins where doubts arise. Border issues have increased tensions between the India and Nepal. Is China more dependable?
Um, okay, let me answer these questions from from a strategic point of view. I mean, we have to look into South Asia from the continental point of view. That is the Himalayan arc that I talked about in detail, and one is the maritime. So now let's just focus on the continent of the maritime and the central part of the arc of the Himalayas, okay, where Nepal, the northeast India, Sikkim, and Bhutan comes in. So this is a place where the strategic interests of China come into. One is for South Asia to be a bridge to the Indian Ocean for their strategic interest, that is the resources that has to the resource hungry China, let's say. So then I brought out the issue about the CPEC and the Himalayan corridor and the BCIM. So these are strategic networks, connectivities that will help China to get resources, even if there are problems in the Indian and Indo-Pacific regions in the Malacca Strait. So this is where China's strategic interests come in. So this is where China's goodwill and China's political interest comes in. And one thing for sure is it is because not because we are bordered with it is because Tibet exists there. So the sensitivities of China, Tibet is where the central arc lies. That is what we can notice today. If you look at the Himalayan range from Arunachal Pradesh to Ladakh, where is there not a problem? You see problems, but we started surfacing from 2017, but the problem lies there, and the countries that border these will have some sort of impact from China.
Thank you. There's a question to General Chauhan. As part of your PhD work, did you interact with Nepali armed forces officers who have been trained in India? Yes. What was their, if yes, what was their opinion about relationship?
Sir, the issue about Nepali Armed Forces officers, we've come a long way from 2002, 2003 when they wouldn't interact with us at all, to now when they interact absolutely with us. You take the case of Binoj, who's with us here. He's like a younger brother to me. We've shared a course together. We were together, and we have very frank views with each other. I, during the course of the PhD, did talk to a lot of officers, a lot of younger officers. They feel very similarly about their relationship with India. You must understand, sir, that the Nepalese army officers are extremely close to us. They attend courses with us far more than they attend courses with China or Pakistan or any other country in the world. We have shared cultural habits. We have shared food habits. I know that Nepalese army officers going to Pakistan often have to say that they are vegetarian so that they don't eat any food that is against their religion, which is not the case here. A lot of officers have asked me to arrange, for them to go to Tirupati or to go to various other religious institutions in India, just as many of us go to Pashupatinath or Muktinath or the other dhams that I mentioned earlier. So, in everything that they say, that they would, if you were to offer them a course in India, and I remember at the highest level, if you were to say, sir, I have 3 NDC vacancies, the officers would really want to come to India more than NDC vacancy in Bangladesh, or more than an NDC vacancy in Pakistan, and definitely more than the NDU vacancy in China. Maybe the US and the UK has also preferred, but all of them other than that would prefer India. I have absolutely no doubt that we have the closest relationships. And during the Jan Andolan and the aftermath of the Jan Andolan, when there was a lot of talk about the Royal Nepalese Army being dissolved along the lines of the Iraqi army when the Americans had come in, that was one of the things we stood very firm. General JJ was the chief, and I was the DA. So we were absolutely clear that there would be no question of the dissolution of the Nepalese army. And the Nepalese army, to my mind, has stood firm and have transited very beautifully from the Royal Nepalese Army to the Nepalese Army. And I remember, and Binoj can nod his head if he wants to, that when I was there, the oath that the Royal Nepalese Army would take would be to the king. And once the king handed over the kingdom and it became a country, the oath changed to Nepal, to the country of Nepal. That's a huge change, sir. It's a huge change. It's an oath that a military man takes to a particular person or takes to a particular country, and the Nepalese army transited beautifully. So at no stage have I've interacted, and I continue to interact even today, has there ever been an anti-India feeling in officers and the men of the Nepalese army? Absolutely never.
Very reassuring, very reassuring. General Shokin, Chauhan, there's another question for you. It says, much appreciate the warmth you have enjoyed in Nepal, fully compliment you for to have demystified the China card. Undoubted, why can't India draw the line longer than harping on curtailing freedom of Nepal to breathe in global world? Would you indeed have stories of trust to be shared for mutual benefit? My question, what will it take for India to have a long-term Nepal policy than to be transactional, emotional, and reactionary?
Sir, I am a little... one thing I would actually, I would speak truthfully, because I know that this has Chatham House rules. I think the single most defining relationship that is there between us is our shared heritage. I remember it was, I was a DA there. It was 2004, sir. 2004 Dussehra time, sir. And if you've been, gone to Gurkha Battalion during Dussehra, you know how they celebrate Dussehra, sir. The entire Nepal celebrates Dussehra like that. And there is a beautiful temple uh, in Kathmandu called the Bhavani Taleju. Am I right, Binoj? And there only Hindus are allowed. In fact, only Nepalese are allowed. And I asked the chief, I said, please, during Dasai, please allow me to visit the Bhavani Taleju. It's a very, very, very important deity that is there in Nepal. So I was the only DA permitted to go anywhere in the country, sir, because of a shared cultural and religious heritage, sir. There is just no question. And my ambassador, Shiv Mukherjee, used to say that he's not going to be worried about the China card till Han Chinese start marrying Nepalese women. That's not going to happen. Do you people even realize that more than 60 to 70% of the Nepalese population in Nepal have shared family ties with India, sir? How is that going to go? Just by a couple of people learning Mandarin changes nothing. Of course, we have to be smart, we have to be sensible, we have to hold our own. And we have to make sure that Nepal stays with us. But we have so many points of similarity and such few points of dispute. So if we just make a small matrix and say, what are our issues of dispute? A small boundary dispute, it's actually very, very small. A small issue about sharing of waters, a small issue of a couple of maybe Chinese coming in, it isn't a problem, sir. The issues are different. Why don't we look at the larger perspective of similarity? And why don't we build on similarity? I have been saying this from the time when I was a young DA in Nepal, and I used to tell my ambassador, I said, sir, understand the similarities. Don't keep talking of the dissonance that is there. And like I said, sir, one day I took the ambassador, and this was after the king had taken over the country. And I must relate this to you for you to understand what it means for us to be in Nepal. And the king had taken over, and the king had cut our telephone line, he cut everything, and he was not permitting access to anything. I took the ambassador to the king's district of Gorkha. He comes from Gorkha, that is from where his ancestors started the process of unifying of Nepal, sir. When I took the ambassador there and I told our soldiers there and our ex-soldiers there that, look, my ambassador is coming and I want you to welcome him. There were 27 gates that had been created from the highway, Pokhara highway to Gorkha. And there were more than 35,000. Now in Nepal, 35,000 is a lot of people, sir. It was, I think, probably the middle of April. It was still quite cold. And the ambassador was surprised at the number of people who came out to meet him and to talk to him. 2 weeks later, the king, who was the king of Nepal, decided that he would visit Gorkha. There were not even 5,000 people there. That is the difference between our relationship. So what I'm saying again is, sir, don't talk of this dissonance. Talk of similarities. Harsh Kakar, sir, writes articles every day. Sir, write on the similarities, write on what all we have with them. This constant negativity affects everybody. There are certain things we should never do in Nepal. We should never ever stop their trade, never stop what we considered to be their lifeline. I mean, I can't even understand how we can start cutting off and saying, no, we're not going to permit this and we're not going to permit this. Who the hell are we, sir? They're a country, we have to give them free access. Secondly, we should never stop the issue of people coming into our country, of Nepalese coming into our country to work in our country, sir. I wonder if you know how much a 1,700-kilometer border costs to put a barbed wire, sir. All of you are ex-servicemen. You've known the amount of money we spent to put that fence along Pakistan's line. And now that we spent that much money and more to put it along Bangladesh. Just imagine the money you're saving by not putting that fence there. 50,000, 60,000 crores. maybe more. Why are you not putting a fence? Because there is no threat. Because you have given free access to those people to come and tell me, sir, really find out and tell me how many problems have happened on the open border. You can count the problems on your open border, sir. Have there been so many problems? Is there such a great threat to India that people have started talking of fence along Nepal? This dissonance that is there, sir, of politicians making noise and bureaucrats who are not knowledgeable about the geography and the people and the culture of Nepal is what is creating this dissonance. Sir. You can't
I
get
think
people in the embassy of Nepal who don't know Nepal at all.
Perspective that the who need to have dissonance would be the way ahead, and that is the common shared heritage means all about, and we must.
My perspective is, sir, be
Left
positive
for
on Nepal.
I mean, it's a beautiful
Be positive on
answer,
Nepal.
and my compliments to you, General Chauhan, for putting this in perspective.
Thank you, sir.
If we are running out of time, so I'll now call upon Harsh Kakar for his concluding remarks and a vote of thanks.
Thank you, General Chaturvedi. I think I'll take the cue from where Shokin left me. Thank you, sir. I hope you can hear me.
Yeah,
can you hear me?
Can.
Yeah, Harsh,
Okay.
unmute yourself, please.
Yeah. Okay. I can be heard. Let me start by saying I'm going to take the cue from where Shokin finished. Relations between two brothers, both having different levels of wealth and power, will always be complex, especially when property, security, and influence from outside is involved. The elder brother would desire the younger give him respect and defer to his interests, while the younger would desire that the elder be generous when discussing issues between the two. It gets further complicated when one of the houses of the two brothers is in some form of turmoil. This, despite the fact that family history, upbringing, culture, and relations are intertwined. Business moves from one brother to the other and back, as also members of both families move freely in each other's houses without any hindrance. The arrival of an unwanted guest into the house of the younger brother, who seeks to instigate the younger against the elder, can occasionally add strain to ties. It would enhance family tensions, especially when the guest attempts to break the ancient ties existing between the brothers by attempting to draw the younger away with promises which he may never be able to fulfill. To resolve such an intricate environment, time is needed and patience is the key. It would need both brothers to display an open mind, be willing to listen to the other's point of view, and let the other handle his own house first before resolving joint or complicated family issues. There are no issues between brothers which cannot be resolved, provided both are willing to be open and receptive. This is human nature and is also the reality between us two countries, India and Nepal. Both sides must seek a solution by creating trust, adhering to non-interference, close cooperation and understanding. The current slightly difficult situation, in my view, is just temporary, and the two families will soon be joined as one, looking towards the future together. The discussions today were open, frank, and very educated. My sincere thanks to our guests from Nepal, Major General Binoj Basnyet and Mr. Ishwar Khanal, who shared their views in an open and unbiased manner. Their contribution has been outstanding. My gratitude also to Shokin Chauhan, an old friend, and Dushyant for their contribution, without which this seminar would have never been successful. Thank you everyone for your participation, and let me just end with a statement. Whatever we are seeing today is just temporary. The future is going to be vastly different. India and Nepal are going to move together, joint hands in hand, working for one another's betterment, economies together, and good and positive development. Thank you, everybody.
I think
Thank you, sir.
Binoj
Thank you very much.
Basnyet had something